He was the devil of New York, feared, untouchable, unstoppable, until a trembling girl on a rain-soaked street made his heart beat for the first time. He left everything behind for love, but betrayal, lies, and a single fake video tore it all apart. Now, a shattered mafia boss must race against time to save the woman he loves and the baby he never knew, before it's too late. Before we enter Damian Blackwood's world, a world of crime, betrayal, and a love worth dying for, subscribe and turn on the bell. Trust me, you'll want to see every twist, every lie, and every shocking revelation unfold. Damian Blackwood was not born dangerous. He was carved into danger, molded by betrayal, sharpened by blood. New York whispered his name with a mixture of fear and fascination. Some said he had no soul left. Some said he traded it willingly. Everyone agreed on one thing. Damian was a man built to destroy or devour anything that came in his way. He was the kind of man who never looked back after burning a bridge, the kind who slept with a gun under his pillow, the kind mothers warned their sons never to anger, and fathers never dared to owe his world revolved around power, precision, and silence, the lethal kind that made grown men tremble, until one rainy night cracked the armor he believed was unbreakable. The storm that night seemed alive, wind thrashing the city, rain slapping the pavement like the sky was punishing the earth. Damian was driving through an empty intersection, thinking about nothing, feeling absolutely nothing, as always. But then he slammed the brakes so hard the tires screamed, because in the middle of the road was a scooter, tipped over, wheels spinning weakly, and beside it, a girl struggling to get up, her small frame trembling violently beneath the rain. Damian cursed under his breath, shoved his door open, and stepped into the storm. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even panicking. She was apologizing. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, wincing as she tried to stand. "I didn't mean to block the road. I slipped. I hope I didn't damage your car. I really can't afford—" Damian froze. People feared him. People begged for mercy. People lied, bribed, cursed, confessed. But no one apologized to him. No one smiled at him. And she, drenched, shivering, possibly injured, was giving him an apologetic smile like she was the one who'd done something wrong. He stared at her like she was a glitch in the universe. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "Ellie," she said softly. "Ellie Carter." Her hands were scraped, knees bruised, clothes soaked, and still she smiled. The storm continued raging, but for the first time in his life, Damian felt something warm flicker in his chest. Something foreign, something unwelcome, something irresistible. He ordered one of his men to take her scooter for repairs. Ellie protested, insisting she could manage. Damian didn't listen. Something about her made him listen only to his instincts. When he insisted on dropping her home, she hesitated before finally agreeing. That was how he learned she was working 3 jobs: daytime cashier, evening waitress, and nighttime delivery to save her mother, who was dying slowly in a small, overcrowded hospital ward. She didn't complain once. Not about her exhaustion, not about the rain, not about her broken scooter, not about carrying the weight of the world alone. Damian drove her to her apartment, a cramped, dimly lit room on the 5th floor of an old building, and helped her carry the food orders she still insisted on delivering. "So you can continue your shift?" Damian asked, almost irritated. "I have to," she said, forcing a small smile. "Mom's medicine isn't cheap." That night, Damian returned to his penthouse, a fortress of glass and steel, and sat in silence for hours, replaying her smile in his mind, a smile that didn't belong in his world. The next morning, he made a decision that shocked even his top men. He walked into the hospital, found Ellie's mother's file, and paid every debt, every bill, every pending treatment, anonymously. The staff stared at him like he was a ghost, a mafia king paying medical bills? No one dared question him. Weeks later, Ellie found out the truth. She ran to find him, breathless, red-eyed, overwhelmed, and barged into his office, catching even his guards by surprise. She stood there, holding the receipt in her trembling hands. "You did this," she whispered. Damian braced himself for anger, accusations, fear. But Ellie stepped forward and hugged him. Damian Blackwood, a man shot at more times than he could count, a man who had faced death without flinching, felt the breath knocked out of him by the softness of her arms around him. It was the first time in years someone touched him without fear. He didn't hug her back. He couldn't. His body went rigid, like he didn't know how to handle warmth, but something inside him cracked, a quiet, dangerous crack. That was the night everything changed. Within months, he started pulling away from his criminal empire, handing responsibilities to people he trusted, cutting strings, burning documents, closing accounts. For the first time, Damian wasn't fighting to become king. He was fighting to become human. When he asked Ellie to marry him, he didn't kneel. He didn't plan a proposal. He simply told her he didn't want a life without her, and she said yes. Their wedding was quiet. Just them, a courthouse judge, and a simple silver ring. No lavish ceremony, no audience, no mafia men lurking in corners. Ellie wore a modest white dress. Damian wore a black suit without his usual armor of coldness. When she whispered her vow, Damian's heart clenched painfully. When she smiled at him, he thought he could actually breathe. He held her hand like it was the last piece of goodness left in the world, because for him, it was. But happiness is the one thing a man like Damian was never allowed to keep. While they walked out of the courthouse, laughing in the sunlight, believing they had outrun fate. Two men watched from across the street. Vincent Hale, Damian's oldest partner, once his closest friend, and Marcus Kane, the man Damian trusted with his life more than once. Their eyes followed Ellie with icy calculation. Marcus exhaled smoke, smirking. Vincent slid his hands into his coat pocket, expression unreadable. "He really left us," Marcus muttered. "Walked away like we were nothing." "For her," Vincent said, voice low, simmering with venomous disbelief, "he chose that girl over the Empire." Marcus flicked ash to the ground. A slow, sinister smile curved on Vincent's lips. "Then she dies first," Vincent whispered. "And when she does, Damian will crawl back to us on broken knees." The wind carried their words away, straight toward the couple who had no idea their love was being marked for destruction. From the shadow of the alley, Vincent lifted his phone, snapped a picture of Ellie, and murmured into a call. "Prepare everything. We're going to ruin Damian Blackwood, starting with her." Damian Blackwood had always known the meaning of power, but he had never understood the meaning of peace. That was until he moved into a modest townhouse on the outskirts of the city, far from the smoky corridors of New York's criminal underworld. The house was small, with creaking floors and sunlight slipping in through uneven blinds, but it felt alive in a way his penthouse never had. Here, there were no bodyguards, no whispers of threats, no codes to enforce, just walls, empty but welcoming, and a world that belonged to him and Ellie alone. He found himself cooking with her in the tiny kitchen, awkward at first. He had mastered weapons, strategy, intimidation, yet eggs, toast, and coffee proved to be a new kind of challenge. Ellie laughed at him when he dropped the spatula for the third time. Damian, who had once stared down enemies without blinking, flushed a dark red under his flawless composure. She teased him endlessly, and he found himself smiling in a way that scared him. It was a quiet, domestic happiness, a dangerous emotion for a man who had only known fear, control, and survival. Nights became his sanctuary. Damian slept with a calm he had never known. No nightmares of bullets, no phantom screams, no shadows leering at his window. He awoke to Ellie's soft breathing, the warmth of her body beside him, and for the first time, he felt tethered to life in a way that wasn't violent or transactional. He watched her sleep and marveled at how someone so fragile could anchor a man like him, a man who had ruled empires with fear and violence, but there was always a whisper of danger in the corners of his mind. Ellie didn't know the truth about him, not the blood on his hands, not the enemies he had made, not the sins he carried like scars on his soul. He prayed she never would. Damian understood that his past was a shadow that would always loom, even in the warm light of this home. Meanwhile, the world he had left behind was unraveling without him. Vincent Hale and Marcus Kane, once Damian's closest allies, were drowning in chaos. Without his razor-sharp mind and the silent intimidation he carried, their empire fractured. Rival gangs encroached on territories they could no longer defend. Deals that once flowed smoothly crumbled in weeks. Violence erupted unpredictably. Vincent cursed quietly over the phone, his fingers tapping impatiently. Marcus paced the office, jaw tight, fury etched into every line of his face. "They think they can survive without him," Vincent muttered, eyes narrowing at a map spread across the table. "They're wrong. The king walks away, but the queen is still vulnerable. She's everything to him, and she's the key to making him come back." Marcus's smirk was thin, predatory. "Then we remind him why leaving us was a mistake. Destroy her first. Nothing will hurt him more. Not bullets, not betrayal. Nothing like watching her break." The thought of Ellie being harmed should have sparked a distant alarm in Damian's world, but at this moment he remained blissfully unaware. Life in their little home moved in quiet rhythms. Breakfasts that lingered too long, grocery trips that ended in laughter when Damian nearly knocked over shelves, evenings spent curled together on the couch, her head on his chest as he read aloud from books she insisted he try. He had traded the empire for this fragile world, and every heartbeat whispered that it was worth it. Then came the evening that altered everything. Ellie had been unusually quiet, her hands fidgeting as she reached for his. Damian noticed, his instincts on edge. He stopped mid-step in the kitchen. She looked up, eyes wide, nervous. There was a trembling in her fingers as she placed them over his hands, over his heart, over his life without even knowing it. "Damian," she whispered, voice so small it made him lean closer. I think I'm pregnant." The words froze him, not in fear, not in dread, but in awe. A man who had stared death in the eyes, who had survived bullets, knives, betrayals, and blood feuds, now trembled because a life that belonged to both of them, existed inside the woman he loved. His chest tightened with an emotion he hadn't allowed himself in decades: wonder. He didn't speak at first. He only leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead, lingering there as though trying to imprint this moment into the marrow of his bones. You just gave me the only thing I ever wanted," he murmured, voice low, raw, unguarded. The weight of those words settled in the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Ellie smiled, a mix of relief, joy, and fear glimmering in her eyes. She had been waiting for the right time to tell him, unsure how Damian would react. And yet, here he was, fragile in the most human way she had ever seen him. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, memorizing him, memorizing this man who had killed and terrified and loved all at once. Days turned into weeks. Damian and Ellie moved through life cautiously, cherishing quiet moments. He began to leave notes on her pillow when he left early for work, small words of affection she would find when the world felt too heavy. He carried groceries without complaint. He listened when she cried about her mother's health. He laughed at the small absurdities of life, and all the while, his past lingered at the edges of their new world like a storm, ready to break. Vincent and Marcus, watching from afar, escalated their plan with cruel precision. They couldn't touch Damian directly without exposing themselves to danger, but Ellie, His heart, his tether, was another matter. They sent spies to track her routines, noting every route she took, every late-night delivery she made. They whispered to rival gangs, bribed contacts, and even planted small threats to create tension. Every calculated move was a message, a promise that the world Damian thought he had left behind could follow him anywhere. One evening, Damian left the house to run a simple errand. Groceries for dinner, nothing that required planning or strategy. He returned an hour later, expecting Ellie to be waiting with a smile, the warmth of home greeting him like a sanctuary. Instead, his phone blinked on the counter. A message, unknown number, no name. He picked it up. "You need to see what Ellie does when you're not home." Damian's fingers tightened around the device. His pulse accelerated, not because of danger in the streets, but because this was his world, his Ellie, his home. A shiver ran down his spine. Something in the message was more than a warning. It was a trap, and he knew instinctively, as a man who had survived death countless times, that this was only the beginning. The house suddenly felt too small, too fragile. The quiet of their life was suddenly deafening. Damian's eyes scanned the room, darting to every shadow, every reflection, every corner. The love he cherished now felt like a target, and the storm he had tried to leave behind was creeping closer, relentless, inevitable. He clenched his jaw, silent rage brewing beneath a calm exterior. His empire was gone, but his instincts were not, and he would not let anyone touch what he had fought so hard to protect. As Damian stared at the phone, his mind racing with 1,000 possibilities, another message arrived. "If you value her life, you'll stay away, or watch everything you love burn." And for the first time since meeting Ellie, Damian Blackwood felt truly afraid, not for himself, but for the woman who had become his reason to live. Damian Blackwood sat in his study, the storm outside having softened into a drizzle, but the tension inside him was nothing short of a hurricane. The phone in his hand vibrated, an unknown number flashing on the screen. He hesitated, instinct screaming that this was a trap, that every fiber of his being should ignore it. And yet curiosity, or perhaps an unconscious desire to punish himself, made him press the link. The video began. Ellie, his Ellie, the woman who had coaxed warmth from the cold chambers of his heart. She was on the screen, in bed, with another man. They were laughing, touching, smiling. The intimacy was unmistakable, and every frame burned Damian's soul like acid. He froze. His pulse stopped. The room disappeared around him. The polished oak of his desk, the sleek lines of his chair, the faint scent of rain coming through the window. None of it mattered. Only that image. Only that moment. Only her. Damian Blackwood, the devil who had orchestrated deaths, the nightmare that had toppled men, the feared king of New York's underworld, fell to his knees. The air felt heavy, his chest constricted. He clutched at it as though his ribs could hold back the pain that tore through him. His teeth ground together, his vision blurred, and yet he could not look away. He tried to speak, but his voice was gone, his throat constricted. He wanted to scream, to shout, to destroy the world that had inflicted this betrayal. Instead, all that emerged was a strangled whisper he could not hear himself. Ellie's laughter on the screen rang in his ears, the softness of her skin, the curve of her smile, the warmth of her hands, in the wrong place. A cold, bitter fire ignited inside him. Fury, despair, disbelief, each emotion a dagger. He had thought he understood pain, had thought he had reached the bottom of human torment. He had been wrong. He dialed her number, trembling, desperate for an explanation. "Hi, love, you're home here." Her voice rang like sunlight cutting through darkness. Cheerful, innocent, unaware. Click. The line went dead. Damian dropped the phone, shaking. The smooth surface of his desk reflected his face, pale, stricken, unrecognizable. He pressed his palms into his eyes, trying to stop the world from spinning, trying to erase the images seared into his mind. He felt as though he had been stabbed from the inside, as though the air itself had turned hostile. The reality that his wife, the woman who had become the center of his life, could betray him. It was unbearable. His former partners, Vincent Hale and Marcus Kane, were watching from afar. In their office, high above the city streets, they sipped whiskey. Faces unreadable masks of satisfaction. Vincent broke the silence, voice low and lethal. "See? The trap works every time. The devil falls for love, and the moment he trusts, we strike." Marcus chuckled, cold, calculating. "It's perfect. Let him destroy himself over her. He'll come back broken, and when he does, we control him again. Or he dies." The video was designed to provoke a reaction, and it had succeeded beyond expectation. Damian's empire, built with years of blood and precision, could crumble without him at the helm, if his mind and heart were consumed by this single moment of pain. But Damian wasn't thinking of vengeance yet. He couldn't. His mind was a whirlwind of disbelief, self-loathing, and unbearable grief. He remembered the first time he had held Ellie in his arms, the way she had smiled at him when he had thought he was incapable of being loved. The memory now cut sharper than any knife. He tried to rationalize. Perhaps it was a cruel joke. Perhaps he was hallucinating. Perhaps this was some elaborate scheme to manipulate him. But deep down, instinct told him the truth. He had been struck where he was most vulnerable. Not in the streets, not by enemies, not in a gunfight. No, it was here, at home, in his heart. Damian left his study. The corridors of his house felt alien. His steps were heavy, echoing. The walls that once had offered sanctuary now felt like they were closing in on him. He walked past their shared photographs, the mementos of quiet mornings, their small victories, laughter frozen in frames. Each image mocked him, each memory a reminder of what he believed he had lost. He sat at the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets as though they could anchor him to reality. He tried to breathe, tried to calm the chaos in his mind, but the images from the video continued to invade every corner of his thoughts. Anger surged, pain surged, hatred, confusion, despair, all at once in an unbearable crescendo. Damian felt himself breaking. The man who had ruled the streets with steel and fire, the man who had never bowed to anyone, now felt powerless against the idea that the woman he had sacrificed everything for could betray him. He looked at the clock. Hours passed unnoticed. The sky outside darkened. Rain streaked the windows, echoing the storm inside him. He considered calling her again. But what could he say? How could he ask for an explanation when his soul felt shattered? How could he face her when his trust had been destroyed in an instant? How could he survive the thought that the woman he had loved most in the world might have loved someone else? Silence enveloped him. The house that had once been a refuge now felt like a cage. He could not see her, could not forgive, could not pretend. The only choice he felt capable of was to sever the bond entirely, before his love became his undoing. Damian wrote the divorce papers with meticulous care, every word precise, cold, unyielding. There would be no notes, no explanations, nothing that could betray the storm inside him. It was justice in his mind, a final act of control over a world that had betrayed him, whether real or imagined. By dawn, the city awoke to a new silence in Damian Blackwood's home. He had vanished. No goodbye, no trace. Only the envelope, the cold, deliberate weight of divorce papers, left for Ellie to find the sun rose. But it brought no warmth. It brought only the realization that everything she had built with him could be shattered in a single night. Vincent and Marcus observed from their dark office. They smiled thin, cruel smiles, certain the plan had succeeded. Damian was gone, broken, manipulated. And yet, even as they toasted their victory, Damian's mind was not at rest. Something stirred beneath the surface, a quiet, burning rage, a knowledge that what he had seen might not be the truth. Ellie awoke that morning, tired, anxious, and full of hope, only to find the envelope on the table. She opened it. Her eyes widened, her hands shook, and in that moment the world she knew collapsed. Damian Blackwood had left, and she was left alone. Ellie Carter sat on the edge of her small, creaking sofa, the envelope trembling in her hands like it carried a storm. She had never expected this. Not from Damian, not from the man who had promised her a life away from darkness, a life that was theirs alone. She ripped it open with fingers slick from tears. The papers inside stared back at her, cold and unforgiving. Divorce. The word hit her like a bullet. She screamed, "No, no, Damian, what did I do?" The sound tore through the tiny apartment and spilled out into the alleyway, piercing the night like a siren. Neighbors peeked through windows. Some murmured, unsure whether it was a fight, a scream of despair, or madness itself. Ellie didn't care. Her world had collapsed. Her hands clutched the small plastic stick she had hidden in her purse for days. The pregnancy test. Positive. Bright. Undeniable her child. Their child. And Damian had abandoned her without so much as a note, without a single word, without explanation. The weight of betrayal pressed down like an iron chain, tightening around her chest, threatening to crush her lungs. She dialed his number, again and again. Her fingers trembled with fatigue, raw from clinging to hope that would not answer. "Damian, please," she whispered, leaving yet another voicemail, her voice breaking with desperation. Text after text, no response, call after call, nothing. The silence screamed louder than words ever could. Bills arrived, a mountain of reminders she could not ignore. Every piece of paper was a dagger, reminding her that life moved on even when love betrayed her. She returned work uniforms, repaid small debts, and tried to steady herself. Yet, as the months crawled by, her loneliness grew. Her body changed, the subtle curve of her belly, a reminder of life growing inside her, a life she had to protect without the man who had promised to shield her from the world. Ellie returned to her old life. She went back to delivering food, scooting across rain-slicked streets in the dead of night. She tucked her growing belly beneath oversized jackets and baggy sweaters, each one a makeshift armor against the eyes of strangers, the curiosity of neighbors, and the judgment of the world. She pushed herself harder, walking and riding until her feet bled. Every delivery became a testament to endurance, every smile to strangers a mask for her grief. In the tiny cafes she worked, she cried in bathrooms, silent sobs muffled by sinks and tiled walls. She prayed that no one would hear, that no one would know the life she was living alone. Her mother's health required constant vigilance. The bills never ceased, and yet she carried the weight of Damian's absence as if it were a physical burden, pressing her down, stealing her breath. Yet through all of it, she never gave up, never surrendered. She whispered in the darkness of her room, in the quiet moments between deliveries and exhaustion, "Damian will come. He has to." Her words were more than hope. They were a lifeline, a reminder that she was not broken, merely bent, and she could endure anything for the child growing inside her. Her apartment became a fortress of routine. The small kitchen table where she balanced bills and meal prep doubled as a sanctuary. She decorated a corner with soft blankets and a tiny crib she had purchased from a neighbor willing to lend it, preparing for a future that seemed impossible yet necessary. She read about pregnancy, about nutrition, about childbirth, absorbing every fact like water in a desert. Each day she built a plan. Each night she whispered to her unborn child, promising love, protection, and a father she prayed would return. The city outside her window continued its ceaseless rhythm. Sirens, traffic, shouting from street corners, the distant hum of nightlife. None of it mattered. Ellie had carved a world of survival and quiet dignity within those four walls. The storm outside that night was unlike any she had seen. Rain fell in sheets, as though the heavens themselves mourned her pain. Wind lashed against the windows, rattling blinds and shaking the fragile walls of her apartment. Ellie adjusted her coat, tied her scarf tight, and mounted her scooter, determined to complete her final deliveries before the weather trapped her indoors. She held the handlebars like she held on to life itself, tight, desperate, unwilling to let go. The city streets glistened under the wet light of street lamps, reflections of neon signs dancing across puddles. Every turn she took was calculated, practiced, but the storm had turned familiar paths into treacherous terrain. Water pooled at corners, slick and unpredictable. And yet, Ellie pressed on, each delivery a small rebellion against despair. Her body, heavy with 9 months of pregnancy, strained with each movement. A dull ache had been growing in her lower back for hours, ignored because the work could not wait, the deliveries could not wait, and the world outside did not pause for pain. Then, it happened. A sudden slip. The scooter hit a hidden patch of water, sending it skidding uncontrollably. Ellie screamed, a sharp, high-pitched cry that cut through the storm. Her hands clenched the handlebars, but gravity and force won the battle. She fell. Pain exploded through her abdomen, raw and fiery. She landed hard on the wet pavement, the wind knocked out of her lungs. Her vision blurred, her breath shallow. Panic rose in her chest, not for herself, but for the life inside her. She tried to move, tried to stand, but her body refused. Her arms trembled, her legs weak, her head spinning. She reached for her phone, the storm hammering down around her, but it slipped from her grasp, skittering across the wet asphalt. She could only cry out for help, her voice almost drowned by the roar of rain and distant traffic. Somewhere, in the shadows of the street, a figure appeared. A woman who had been walking home from work, shielded under an umbrella, saw Ellie sprawled on the ground. Her heart stopped. She ran forward, calling out, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Ellie tried to respond, but only a garbled cry came out. Her body went limp. The rain poured over her like ice water. Her pulse raced uncontrollably. The city seemed to vanish. No lights, no people, no sound, only the storm and her own panic. The stranger dialed emergency services frantically. Instructions were shouted into the phone, adrenaline carrying her words. An ambulance's wail soon pierced the storm. Ellie's world narrowed to darkness, her mind filled with flashes of Damian, of the child growing inside her, of the life they were meant to have together, and she thought, desperately, silently, "Please, let them survive. Let me survive. Let this not be the end." The last thing she remembered before losing consciousness was the stranger's hands holding her, the rain soaking through her hair, the city around her a blur of lights and chaos. And in the silence that followed, only one thought remained. Ellie Carter, 9 months pregnant and alone, lay unconscious on the rain-slicked street, her life and the life of her unborn child, hanging by a fragile thread as the storm raged mercilessly above her. The rain had not let up. The city was a blur of neon lights reflecting off wet asphalt, and the wind carried the smell of gasoline, rain, and something ominous lurking just beyond the street corners. Sarah Mitchell had been walking home from her night shift at the diner when she saw Ellie's scooter toppled on the street, the young woman sprawled on the ground. "Someone call an ambulance!" Sarah shouted, sprinting toward her, arms outstretched. She ignored the soaking rain, ignored her own shoes slipping in the water, and reached Ellie in seconds. The young mother-to-be was barely conscious, pale and trembling, gripping her belly with a thin, futile strength. Ellie's breaths were shallow, broken, panic flashing in her half-closed eyes. "Help my baby," she whispered, barely audible over the storm. Sarah steadied her, pressing her jacket around Ellie to shield her from the rain. Her voice trembled, but she forced it to be steady. "It's okay. You're going to be okay. Just hang on. I'm calling an ambulance right now." Within minutes, paramedics arrived. Sirens wailing, lights slicing through the dark city streets. Ellie was lifted onto a stretcher, bundled in blankets, her body fragile, unsteady. Sarah followed closely, refusing to let her go, whispering reassurance into the young woman's ear despite her own racing heartbeat. At the hospital, chaos greeted them. The emergency room staff moved swiftly, assessing Ellie's condition. Her medical file was empty. No identification other than a driver's license and the number she had saved under a cryptic name, My Last Hope. Dr. Harper, the attending physician, frowned as she held the phone. "We need to reach someone responsible immediately. Does she have any emergency contacts?" Nurses searched Ellie's purse, digging through receipts, cards, and phone numbers, until finally, one number stood out. "There's only one saved number," the nurse said, holding the phone like it was a fragile lifeline. "My Last Hope. Should I call it?" Dr. Harper nodded grimly. "Do it." The phone rang. On the other end, Damian Blackwood answered, his voice flat, distant. "This is Damian," he said, tension in his words betraying none of the storm brewing in his mind. "This is Dr. Harper." A calm yet urgent voice replied, "A woman named Ellie Carter. She's pregnant, critical, and she listed you as her only contact." Damian froze. His pulse skipped a beat. The world tilted. "What? Ellie?" His voice cracked, disbelief making it sound weak, unrecognizable. "She's losing blood. We need O negative immediately. It's life or death." Damian's chest constricted. His hands tightened around the phone as though he could crush the reality into submission. He felt guilt slam into him like a monster. Every step he had taken to leave her, every betrayal of trust, real or imagined, now pressed down on him, unrelenting, suffocating. She saved my number as her last hope? His whisper was fragile, a broken echo of the man who once ruled empires with a single glance. "Sir, we need you to come. The situation is critical. She and her baby, your baby, both require immediate care." Dr. Harper continued, urgency in her tone. Damian's mind reeled. His heart pounded so violently that he was certain it could break through his ribs. He had left her, abandoned her to a lie he had believed, and now his child's life, and Ellie's, hung in the balance. Every second that passed was a gamble with fate itself. He didn't wait. He didn't consider the storm, the distance, the traffic. He ran from his apartment, jumped into his sleek black car, and hit the accelerator as though the road itself would yield to his desperation. The city blurred past him, lights smeared into streaks of neon, rain lashing against the windshield. He didn't care. Nothing mattered but reaching her memories, flashed in his mind like lightning. Her smile when he first paid her mother's bills anonymously, the soft curve of her cheek as she slept beside him, the warmth of her hand holding his in that tiny courthouse wedding. And then, the video, the betrayal. His heart had shattered. And yet this call, this urgent plea, the realization that she still trusted him enough to save his number as my last hope, struck something deeper, something he had not felt in years, hope. The drive was harrowing. Rainwater pooled on streets, traffic snarled in chaotic jams, and pedestrians scattered under umbrellas like ghosts. Damian ignored them all. His black car sliced through the night with a ferocity that matched his racing pulse. Somewhere behind him, he felt the distant hum of engines, shadows moving like predators. Vincent Hale and Marcus Kane had been following him since his phone had buzzed with the first frantic call from Dr. Harper. They had anticipated this moment, assumed Damian would return to the city consumed by guilt, unprepared for the truth that awaited him. They trailed silently, ready to strike, to manipulate, to ensure that no reunion would ever be peaceful. Damian didn't know they were behind him. He had no time to. His focus was singular, his mind a razor-sharp line of intent. Reach Ellie, save her, save their child, and survive the storm, both outside and within himself. At the hospital, nurses rushed Ellie to an operating room, prepping for immediate surgery. Blood monitors beeped rapidly, machines flared in warning. Dr. Harper directed the team with precision, every second a race against time. Yet even here, amidst medical urgency, there was uncertainty. Without a donor match, without O-negative blood, the situation could turn catastrophic. Damian's car skidded on a corner as rain slickened the asphalt, heart in his throat. He gritted his teeth, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles whitened. Please. Hold on, he muttered under his breath, eyes locked on the hospital lights glowing through the storm. The call had shaken him to his core. Every wrong he had believed Ellie committed, every imagined betrayal, now seemed insignificant compared to the fragile, living heartbeat he had almost lost touch with. Guilt mixed with rage, fear mixed with love, and determination crystallized into a single, driving force. As he neared the emergency entrance, he saw the flashing lights of police cars in the distance. Accidents from the storm blocked some streets, forcing him to swerve, narrowly avoiding collisions. Every second felt eternal. Every puddle, every corner, every obstacle was amplified by the stakes. Ellie's life, their unborn child's life, his chance at redemption. In the shadows behind him, Vincent and Marcus pressed forward, engines growling like wolves on a hunt. Their eyes glinted with anticipation. They had engineered the perfect trap. Damian, raw with emotion, distracted, unarmed against the world they intended to unleash. But Damian didn't see them. His mind could not register their presence. All that existed was the hospital, the machines, the people waiting to save the woman he had abandoned, the child he had never touched. He slammed the car door open, drenched, soaked to the bone, and sprinted into the hospital entrance. Security guards barely registered him, recognizing the name and the desperation, pleading for mercy, for life. They stepped aside without a word. He followed the frantic nurse to the emergency ward, slipping past machines beeping warnings and doctors shouting orders. His heart pounded, matching the rhythm of the alarms, matching the panic rising in his chest. Every second without her seemed like an eternity. Once the doctor confirmed Ellie was stabilized temporarily, but still critical, Damian insisted on donating blood immediately. He rolled up his sleeve, veins prominent under the storm of adrenaline coursing through his body. His hands shook as the needle pierced his skin, the metallic smell of blood filling his senses. It wasn't the first time he had seen blood. It had been his companion for years. But this was different. This was Ellie's blood. Life for the child he had abandoned, life for the woman he had destroyed through mistrust and doubt. As the blood flowed, he gripped the edges of the chair so tightly it ached, every heartbeat echoing guilt his mind raced, the divorce papers he had left, the imagined betrayal, the video. All of it had led to this nightmare. He had almost killed them by letting rage blind him. Finally, the nurses allowed him into the ICU, and there she was. Ellie lay pale, unconscious, wires connecting her to machines that beeped and hummed relentlessly. The monitors flashed with the tiny rhythm of a life fighting against fragility. Her lips were slightly parted, her chest rising slowly but weakly. The storm outside the hospital mirrored the storm in Damian's soul. He fell to his knees beside her bed, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. His fingers trembled, tracing the curve of her cheek as though memorizing it in case the world ended before she awoke. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. "I killed us. I killed everything. Please, Ellie, wake up. I need you." A doctor approached him cautiously. "Sir, you need to stay calm. Stress can worsen your health as well." "I don't care," Damian said, jaw tight. "I will stay here until she wakes up or dies." As the hours dragged on, the nurses moved to the NICU with Damian's premature daughter, a tiny, fragile life clinging to existence. Wrapped in blankets, tubes feeding her oxygen, she was a silent, fragile reminder of both love and failure. Every monitor beep was a prayer he could barely voice. He stared, willing the small chest beneath the wires to keep fighting. Time became a blur. Rain pattered against the windows. Thunder rolled distant yet ominous. Damian hardly noticed. He barely noticed the world at all. His life had condensed to two fragile forms in one hospital, Ellie and their child. Then suddenly 2 shadows fell across the hallway where Damian had been waiting, every muscle tense, eyes scanning every inch of the floor. He froze, instinct taking over. Vincent Hale and Marcus Kane. "So," Marcus said, smirking like the world was still theirs to command, "you still love her?" Damian's jaw clenched, fists balling at his sides. Fury rose, raw and untamed. He had been brought low, stripped of control, humiliated by lies. Yet here they were, mocking him at the very moment his heart was bleeding in the hospital corridor. "I don't care what games you play," Damian growled, voice low, dangerous. "Stay out of this." Vincent, his face a mask of calm calculation, raised a hand before Damian could act. "Oh no, my friend, you really should see how that video was made." Damian froze, his pulse spiking again, dread tightening around his chest like a vice. His mind flashed back to the moment he had seen Ellie in what he thought was betrayal. The video, the lies, the manipulated reality. Marcus laughed softly, cruelly. "You thought she betrayed you, that she deceived you. But that was us. Every frame, every smile. It was our design." Damian's vision darkened with rage. His instincts screamed to strike, to tear them apart. But he paused, because behind his fury was something stronger, a simmering, terrifying desire for revenge, a need to protect the woman and child who were his world. "They thought they could break you," Marcus continued, stepping closer. "And now you're right where we want you, vulnerable, helpless, torn apart." Damian's fists tightened. His body trembled, not from fear, but from the coiling fire of wrath and grief. He realized something crucial. If he acted too soon, he could endanger Ellie and the baby. Too slow, and Vincent and Marcus might succeed in manipulating him into another trap. The monitors in the NICU beeped sharply. Damian's daughter coughed weakly against the tubes, tiny hands reaching out into the sterile world. Damian's chest heaved. Every fiber of his being screamed to protect, to fight, to destroy. "You will pay for this," Damian said, voice low, a growl of impending destruction. "Every lie, every second of pain you caused me, you will pay." Vincent's phone buzzed. He smirked, holding it up like a weapon. Damian's eyes followed, heart hammering. "You really should see how that video was made," Vincent repeated, and Damian knew in that instant the truth had been manipulated. The betrayal he thought he had endured was not real. It had been engineered to destroy him, to sever his love, to make him walk away. Damian felt his knees buckle under the weight of rage and relief that Ellie had never betrayed him, rage that Vincent and Marcus had dared to play with his heart, his family, his life. Every second felt like a knife against his soul. He clenched his fists so hard his nails dug into his palms. Every thought was electric with fury, every breath a firestorm of vengeance and protection. But he could not act recklessly. Ellie's life and the baby's hung in the balance. If he made the wrong move here, if he struck too soon, both could pay the ultimate price. The storm outside the hospital continued its relentless battering, matching the storm within Damian's chest. He stared at Vincent, then Marcus, eyes dark, dangerous, and unrelenting. "You will regret this," Damian whispered, voice low, deadly. "Every second you think you've won, you will regret it. Because I will rise from this, And when I do, nothing you built will survive." Vincent's smirk faltered for the first time. Marcus's grin wavered. They had underestimated the depth of Damian's fury, the ferocity of a man who had been broken but refused to be beaten, especially when it came to the woman he loved and the child he had created. As Damian's gaze burned into them, a loud alarm echoed from the NICU, an urgent, shrill warning. The machines monitoring his daughter had detected a sudden drop in vitals. Damian's heart stopped. For a fleeting second, nothing else existed but the tiny life fighting against death, and the two men in the hallway who had dared to touch his world. Vincent held the phone between two fingers, the way a predator might hold the last shred of evidence left behind after a well-executed kill. His thumb tapped the screen, and multiple small windows appeared. Raw footage, editing layers, source files. Damian's eyes narrowed. At first, he didn't understand what he was looking at. Then the truth unraveled in front of him, frame by frame, layer by layer, lie by lie. The woman in the video, the one he had believed was Ellie, wasn't Ellie at all. Her face was reconstructed through dozens of AI-generated composites. Her movements were manipulated. Her smile was digitally puppeted. Her voice, stolen, stitched, and remade. Ellie had never been in that room. Ellie had never touched another man. Ellie had never betrayed him. The truth hit Damian like a blade sliding straight through his ribs. Vincent zoomed out of the layered screen, merging the clips into the final version, the version that Damian had watched the night he shattered his vows, shredded his marriage, and burned his own life to ashes. A video forged to kill love. A video made to break him. Damian felt the ground tilt beneath him. His fingers twitched, curling slowly, digging crescents into his palms. A tightness formed in his chest, squeezing his lungs mercilessly. "Fake?" he whispered. The word barely left his throat. It struggled past grief, past heartbreak, past the irreversible damage he had done. Vincent tilted his head, amused. "A masterpiece, really. Cost us a fortune. Worth every dollar." Marcus chuckled. "You should have seen your face when we sent it to you, the mighty Damian Blackwood, destroyed by pixels." The hallway fell silent, cold, suffocating silence. The kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was full of tension, full of regret, full of something ancient and violent stirring awake. Damian didn't breathe for several seconds. He couldn't. The images burned into him. Ellie smiling at him on their wedding day. Ellie whispering she thought she was pregnant. Ellie collapsing alone in the rain, carrying the child he had abandoned. His fault. All of it. His fault. He swallowed, but it did nothing to clear the lump lodged in his throat. "What have I done?" His voice cracked, raw, gutted. "What did I do to her?" Marcus stepped closer, emboldened by Damian's brokenness. A mistake. "She loved you blindly," Marcus said, leaning in until his breath brushed Damian's cheek. "And you threw her away like trash." Vincent smirked. "You didn't even question it. We barely had to try." "That's the thing with monsters," Marcus added. "They destroy everything they touch, even the ones who love them." The sound that left Damian's chest was not human, a low, fractured exhale that trembled with pain and something far more dangerous. His shoulders rose and fell slowly. Too slowly. The storm inside him had stopped raging. It had gone still. Too still. Vincent's smirk faltered. Marcus swallowed. Because when Damian lifted his head, nothing human remained behind his eyes. They were black pools of something bottomless, the kind of emptiness forged only by heartbreak deep enough to scar the soul and rage deep enough to resurrect the dead. His voice came out soft. Too soft. A whisper meant for graves. "You think," Damian said slowly, "that breaking me was the victory." His fingers uncurled one by one, calm, steady, terrifyingly gentle. The kind of gentle that precedes a catastrophe, but you didn't break me. Step, step. Each step he took toward them was deliberate, controlled, precise, a predator rediscovering his throne. You freed me. Vincent took a half step back. Marcus blinked, suddenly less certain. Damian continued, breath steady, tone chilling. I walked away from the empire I softened. I became a man Ellie could love. He paused, head tilting, eyes sharp as glass. But you dragged me back. The lights above flickered as thunder cracked outside the hospital, rattling the windows. Damian didn't flinch. You dragged me back to the man I swore I'd never be again. Vincent opened his mouth to speak, but Damian cut him off with a whisper that froze him mid-breath. Run. Marcus frowned. What? Damian's jaw flexed, fury trembling beneath skin stretched too tightly over heartbreak. I said... He took one more step forward, and the air shifted. The temperature dropped. The hall held its breath. Run. His voice was low, broken, deadly, a promise sealed with blood and regret. You'll wish I killed you quickly. Marcus's expression shattered into panic. Vincent paled, fingers tightening around his phone. Damian's eyes flicked to the NICU where his daughter fought to live, then back to the men who had tried to destroy her life before it even began. His rage sharpened into something surgical, cold, focused, inevitable. Vincent and Marcus exchanged a terrified glance, and then... The hospital lights suddenly went dark, plunging the hallway into blackout. And in that instant, both men realized they were trapped inside a building, with the monster they had just resurrected. The night air was thick with the scent of smoke, oil, and decay as Damian Blackwood arrived at the ruins of the old warehouse. The city's neon glow barely touched the cracked concrete walls, the shattered windows, and the rusting shipping containers littered across the yard. This place had once been the heartbeat of Vincent and Marcus's empire, the womb of their greed, the cradle of their power. Now, it would witness its destruction. Damian's boots crunched over broken glass and debris as he dragged Vincent and Marcus forward, their hands bound, faces pale with a mixture of fear and disbelief. The men who had manipulated him, tormented him, and attempted to destroy everything he loved now realized how little control they truly had. You remember this place. Damian's voice was low, steady, ice threaded through every syllable. Every shipment, every ledger, every weapon stored here, all of it tied to your lies, all of it built on fear and betrayal. Vincent opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus silenced him with a glance. Neither knew what Damian was planning, and that ignorance terrified them more than any gun ever could. Damian moved first to a stack of old ledgers, leather-bound books that detailed every transaction, every bribe, every extortion. He grabbed them with hands that shook, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to do. One by one, he ripped the pages, scattered them across the damp concrete floor, and set them ablaze with a single flick of his lighter. The fire caught quickly, crackling hungrily as the smoke curled into the night sky. The acrid scent filled Damian's lungs, burning away remnants of doubt. Next, he tore through hidden safes, prying them open with cold precision. Every stash of cash, every illegal document, every weapon. It all went up in flames or into dumpsters, leaving nothing for Vincent and Marcus to cling to. Damian's fury was not a mindless rage. It was calculated, controlled. He had the heart of a monster, yes, but now he wielded it like a sword to cut away corruption, not to feed it. "Look at this," he said, holding up a pile of false IDs, passports, and encrypted drives. All the tools you used to terrorize, to manipulate, to destroy gone. Let the world take you now. Let the law pick through the ashes. Let it bury you under the weight of your own crimes. Vincent's smirk faltered, replaced by a twitching unease. "You can't. You're done," Damian said, his tone absolute. "I'm done playing your game. I'm done being the monster you think I am. This time, I want redemption." The wind carried the fire's heat across the yard as Damian methodically dismantled the empire Vincent and Marcus had built with patience and precision. Every ledger that had once been used to blackmail, every shipment meant for illicit trade, every weapon, every symbol of their terror, vanished before their eyes. Vincent tried to speak again, but Damian raised a hand. "No words, no excuses. Nothing you say matters anymore." For the first time, Vincent and Marcus felt fear the way Damian had once made thousands of men feel. Not a fear of death, but of power stripped bare. A fear that comes from knowing everything you've built can vanish in a heartbeat, and that someone is capable of doing it without hesitation. Damian paused, taking a deep breath, chest heaving from adrenaline and exertion. The fire reflected in his eyes, burning away years of darkness, yet illuminating the shadow of a man who had loved and lost and now sought to reclaim the light redemption. He whispered to himself, "It's time I earn it. For her." Bleeding and exhausted, Damian returned to the hospital. Every step down the corridors felt heavier than the last, each heartbeat echoing the weight of his sins and the urgency of his promise. The emergency lights cast a cold glow, sterile and unforgiving, over the linoleum floors. Dr. Harper stepped forward as he approached the ICU, her face solemn. "Your baby survived, but she's very weak. And Ellie, she still hasn't woken up." Damian's chest tightened. He rushed to her side, sliding onto the edge of the bed like a man seeking refuge in the one thing he feared losing most. He took her hand, warm yet fragile, pressing it against his own. Then gently, he placed the tiny, delicate hand of their daughter on top of it. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he whispered, voice breaking, trembling with the weight of a man who had destroyed everything he loved. "But I'll spend my life earning it." Minutes stretched into hours. Damian didn't move. He didn't speak. He just held their hands, willing life, protection, and love into the two most precious beings in his world. The monitors beeped softly, a rhythm he felt in his bones, each sound a promise, a lifeline, a second chance. Outside, the storm had calmed. The city's hum returned, indifferent to the battles being fought in a small ICU room. But inside, every second was a war. Against guilt, against time, against fate itself. Damian's mind wandered, thoughts circling the past, the lies, the video, the nights of pain, the choices he had made. But for the first time, clarity pierced the darkness he could fight, he could protect, he could redeem himself, not through destruction, but through love. And then, as if the universe itself had paused, Ellie's eyelids fluttered, a small, tentative movement. Damian's heart surged, hope erupting in a way it hadn't in months. He leaned closer, voice trembling, whispering her name over and over like a prayer. "Ellie, wake up, please, wake up." But before her body could respond, before the miracle of consciousness could claim her, her hand twitched violently, then went completely still. Damian's blood ran cold. His heart seemed to stop in his chest. The tiny hand of their daughter twitched weakly against his palm, a fragile pulse of life barely holding on. Time slowed. The beeping of monitors, the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant footfalls of hospital staff, all merged into a single, unbearable moment. He pressed closer to her, inhaling her scent, feeling the warmth of her skin, and whispered, voice shaking, raw with fear and love, "No, no, please, not now." Dr. Harper rushed forward, checking vitals, her face grim. Nurses scrambled. Damian held Ellie as though he could will her back with sheer force of will. Every breath he took was a plea, every heartbeat a drum of impending fate. Outside the room, Vincent and Marcus's empire lay in ashes, but Damian's heart was about to face its most brutal test yet, the possibility of losing the woman he loved and the child he had fought to protect. The night hung heavy over the hospital. The city outside continued its indifferent hum, unaware that within these walls, Damian Blackwood was about to confront the ultimate reckoning of love, guilt, and redemption. Ellie's chest began to rise slightly, but then a sudden sharp flatline beep pierced the room. Damian's head snapped up, eyes wide, his fingers tightening around her limp hand. In that moment, he knew the fight for their lives was far from over, and the next choice he made would decide everything. The storm outside had calmed to a gentle drizzle, but inside the hospital, tension thrummed like a live wire. Hours had passed since Damian had returned from the ruins of Vincent and Marcus's empire, his body battered, his soul heavy with guilt, yet driven by an unyielding purpose. Ellie and their child. The monitors in the ICU beeped steadily, slowly replacing the erratic alarms that had haunted him earlier. Every pulse of life from Ellie felt like a victory. Fragile and fragile alone, Damian had not moved from her bedside. He sat on the edge of the bed, hand gripping hers, eyes fixed on the rise and fall of her chest. Every breath she took was a symphony, each one a thread holding him together, and then, slowly, impossibly, her eyelids fluttered. Damian froze, his entire being held in suspense, breath caught between hope and fear. Then her eyes blinked open. They were soft, unfocused, but alive. He couldn't contain it. A floodgate of emotion opened. Damian's knees buckled, and he collapsed beside her, head in her lap. His tears fell freely, heavier than any bloodshed he had ever survived, heavier than any fear he had ever faced. He sobbed like a man who had lived a lifetime in shadows and pain, who had built empires on fear but had never known true vulnerability. Until now, Ellie's hand trembled as she reached up to his face, brushing damp strands of hair from his eyes. Her voice was fragile, trembling, yet laced with the piercing clarity that only love and pain combined could create. Why did you leave me?" she whispered. Damian lifted his head, eyes red, throat tight, voice raw. I believed you betrayed me, that I wasn't enough, that I lost everything in a single moment of doubt. But it was a lie. I was blind. I was stupid. I destroyed us, Ellie." Her tears fell quietly, running down her cheeks, mingling with the grief and relief she felt. "You destroyed me, Damian. You destroyed us," she said softly, her voice cracking under the weight of everything she had endured. He cupped her face, fingers trembling. "I'll rebuild you with my own hands. I swear on my life, on my soul, on everything I am. I will make this right." Ellie's lips quivered, but before she could respond, a nurse burst into the room, panic etched in every line of her face. "The baby! She isn't breathing!" The world shifted. The walls of the ICU seemed to close in. Time compressed into a single unbearable instant. Damian's heart lurched violently, a jagged weight slamming into his chest. He didn't hesitate. He sprang to his feet, dragging Ellie with him as they ran toward the NICU. "Please, please, don't let her go," Damian whispered, voice cracking like glass under pressure. Ellie clung to him, sobbing, the tears blending with the rain still clinging to his coat from hours earlier. The hospital corridors blurred past them, lights flashing, staff shouting instructions they barely heard, all background to a single thought: save her, save their child. The NICU doors loomed ahead, but as they reached them, they slammed shut with a metallic clang that reverberated through the corridor like a death knell. Damian slammed his hands against the doors. "Open! Open now!" A nurse's voice came from the other side, strained with fear. "Sir, you can't. It's restricted. We're doing everything we can." "No!" Damian shouted, voice breaking through walls, through fear, through every ounce of the world's cruelty. "She is my child, let me in." Ellie pressed against him, trembling, tears streaming. "Damian, we have to trust them," she whispered. Though her own voice shook with panic, Damian's jaw tightened. He didn't trust anyone, hadn't in years. But now he had no choice. Every second mattered. Every heartbeat counted the baby, their future, balanced on the edge of life and death. He sank to the floor, fists slamming into his knees, rage and helplessness colliding in a violent storm inside him. "I won't lose you. I can't lose you." Dr. Harper appeared at the door, face pale but determined. "Damian, we're doing everything we can. Your daughter is strong, but she needs a miracle. You need to stay calm." Calm. The word was impossible. Damian felt fire roaring in his veins, a monster awakened by fear and love combined. Every muscle tensed, every thought screamed for action. And yet, he had to wait. He had to trust someone else with the one thing he loved most. Hours stretched like lifetimes. The monitor outside beeped with agonizing slowness. Every step of the nurse's movements echoed like thunder in Damian's ears. Every breath Ellie took, small and fragile, was a lifeline he could barely touch. Finally, a nurse slid the doors open just enough to allow Damian to peer inside. His daughter lay in an incubator, tiny and fragile, tubes and wires feeding her delicate body. Her chest rose slightly, a shallow yet steady rhythm Damian's breath hitched. Ellie whispered, reaching out with trembling hands. She's alive," she said, voice choked with relief. Damian sank to his knees beside the incubator, hands hovering over his daughter's tiny body as if he could shield her from everything in the world. "Yes, yes, you're alive, you hear me? My little girl, you're alive," he said, voice breaking, tears streaming freely. Ellie came to his side, pressing her hand against his, joining in silent vigil. Their tears fell together, hands joined over the small miracle that had survived against all odds. In that quiet, fragile moment, the past, the betrayal, the lies, the fake video, all of it seemed to dissolve. There was only life. There was only love. There was only a future they could now fight for. But the calm was temporary. In the shadows outside the NICU, someone moved, watching, waiting. Vincent and Marcus had not vanished entirely. Though their empire lay in ruins, they were not finished. Damian's fury had saved his family, but the threat still lingered, silent and deadly, biding its time. And as Damian pressed his forehead to Ellie's shoulder, whispering promises of protection, love and redemption, a sudden sharp click echoed from the hallway, a gun being cocked. The room froze. Ellie stiffened, sensing the danger. Damian's head shot up, eyes narrowing, the father and protector reawakened. Through the slightly ajar door, a shadow emerged and a familiar, cold, cruel voice whispered, "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you, Damian?" And the figure stepped into the light, weapon raised, intent unmistakable. For Damian, the seconds felt like centuries. Every footstep in the hallway sounded like a countdown to a life he wasn't sure he deserved. Ellie held on to him, trembling, her nails digging into his arm, whispering prayers she hadn't said since childhood. The NICU doors remained shut, sealed like a vault holding his entire world. The fluorescent lights flickered. The air stung with antiseptic. The universe felt suspended. Then the doors slid open. Dr. Harper stood there, exhausted, hair frizzed, sweat beading her temples. But her eyes held a miracle. "She's breathing again," she said in a soft, breathless smile. "She's a fighter." Ellie collapsed into Damian's chest, a sob of pure release bursting from her. Damian wrapped both arms around her, clutching her like she might vanish if he loosened his grip. His eyes burned, his chest constricted. But for the first time in months, He breathed without pain. They walked into the NICU together. Rows of incubators hummed softly, glowing under blue lights. Nurses moved like shadows, gentle, practiced, saving tiny lives with quiet bravery. But Damian saw only one thing, the smallest life, the life he had broken himself trying to protect, their daughter. She lay in a clear incubator, barely bigger than Damian's forearm, wrapped in wires and soft blankets. Her chest lifted in small, struggling breaths. Her hands were curled like rose petals, trembling with fragile determination. Damian approached slowly, as though stepping toward holy ground. When he laid his hand inside the incubator, her tiny fingers wiggled, searched, then wrapped around the tip of his thumb, and in that moment, something inside him, something dark, twisted, broken, cracked open. He felt it. The moment a devil discovered he had a soul after all. His breath hitched, his knees weakened, his throat tightened so violently he had to brace himself against the incubator wall. Ellie touched his shoulder gently. "Damian?" He swallowed hard, unable to respond. How could he explain what was happening inside him? How could he describe the way that tiny grip felt like forgiveness, redemption, and resurrection combined? Ellie's tears fell onto his sleeve. She placed a soft kiss on their daughter's forehead, then whispered, "What should we name her?" Damian's voice broke as he leaned closer, pressing his lips gently to their daughter's fragile skin. "Hope," he whispered, "because she brought me back to you." Ellie let out a soft, trembling breath, resting her forehead against his shoulder. Her fingers intertwined with Damian's, forming a circle of 3, imperfect, wounded, but unbreakable. Hours passed, but neither of them moved far from their daughter. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting wires, speaking quietly. But Damian remained still, one hand on the incubator, the other intertwined with Ellie's. Finally, Ellie turned to him, eyes still damp but no longer shattered. "I'm giving you one chance," she whispered. Her voice didn't tremble. It commanded one. "Don't ever disappear again." Damian lifted her chin gently with his fingers, staring into the eyes of the woman who had both ruined and saved him. "I'll spend every day proving I belong to you," he said. "Every day, every night, every breath I have left." Ellie studied him, searching for the man she had married, and the monster he had once been. Slowly, she nodded. "Then don't fail us again." "I won't," he whispered, sealing the vow with a kiss against her forehead. And from that moment, Damian Blackwood made good on his promise. He left the Mafia world forever. He burned every tie, severed every bond, erased every trace of the man he once was. He became a father who spent nights reading to a daughter too small to understand. A husband who whispered apologies into Ellie's skin until sleep took her. A man who rebuilt himself piece by piece, not with guns or fear, but with gentleness and devotion. New York whispered about him in alleyways and quiet bars. "The devil laid down his crown," they said. "He gave up the throne because he finally found something worth worshiping. His wife, his daughter, his hope." Life became peaceful, almost too peaceful, and sometimes, when the night grew too quiet, Damian wondered if fate had truly forgiven him. Days passed, weeks. Their daughter grew stronger, her heartbeat steady, her grip no longer trembling. It felt like the end of their suffering. It felt like a new beginning. But beginnings often come with shadows, and one shadow was watching. A figure stood just outside the hospital one night, hidden between the birch trees, breath fogging in the cold. He held a phone, a gun, and a promise written in rage. As Damian held Ellie and Hope close inside their warm home, the figure whispered, "You took everything from us, Blackwood. You think you're done? No, the real game starts now." He stepped into the light, a familiar face, a familiar threat. Not Vincent, not Marcus, someone worse. someone Damian had forgotten, or so he thought. A photograph slipped through their mail slot the next morning, a picture of baby Hope sleeping peacefully, taken from outside her window.